I've realized how deep the housing market scam could actually be. Because, okay, I've only been thinking about it because my sister's been saying stuff, and she's it's almost like she's a robot that's designed to aggravate and annoy and piss me off. And every time I'm around her, she seems to just be able to find different ways to aggravate me and annoy me. And this is definitely something that has aggravated and annoyed me. I have tried to explain to my sister that my mum as well, because my sister doesn't really listen to me. But I've tried to explain to my mum that taking out a mortgage on a remortgage on a property that you fully own is like gambling that property. And you're saying that if you take out this massive mortgage for a new house and you can't afford to pay back the mortgages, say you get a bad tenant in there and they can't pay the rent and therefore you can't pay the mortgage, you basically forfeit the property that you've gambled. It's almost like the banks are a type of casino, and maybe they get super rich because of people getting greedy, taking out more, buying more houses, and they can realistically pay back, and maybe they have a ton of unforeseen costs that are coming their way, and they're just thinking, I want this now, rather than think about, can they realistically pay this off. And there's a lot of people that fall into this trap, but I realized how deep it can actually be, because there's a huge amount of migrants coming into to the UK, and okay, some of these people are decent, hardworking people, but a lot of them are not. Like, a lot of them might have a troubled upbringing. They might be brought up in a very dangerous, violent area, and because of this they might see corruption in a different kind of way. There's all sorts of levels of corruption. In I guess in Iran, the level of corruption involves murder and torture, and you could pick up a case of I heard a case of a migrant going into Poland and raping and killing someone, and everyone says how bad that is. But I was also thinking about the migrants that come into England, and there are plenty of people who might take a job for 3 months. They hate the job, they want to quit every single day, but they put up with it just because they want to get 3 months worth of paychecks. And then they get this 3 month worth of paychecks as well as a nice suit, and then they go and rent out a property, and then they just say, right, I quit the job, I've got the property, I'll quit the job, I won't pay the rent, I'll say that I've lost my job, I'll say that I can't pay the rent. And if it's not managed properly, then they can do that. Sometimes you have a managing agent that kind of deals with this kind of situation, and I don't know what happens if they do just refuse to pay. I guess they do their checks and stuff, but yeah, I can also imagine, like, what happens if they just refuse to pay and refuse to leave. And I was just thinking how deep the scam could actually be. If the bankers know that these all the properties, so they have a map. So imagine a map, and then you can see all the red dots of all the properties that they have a large mortgage on, and they know that if they get a bad tenant, and if that bad tenant doesn't pay the rent, then they can't pay off the mortgage. The bankers might even be smart or corrupt enough to know that there are some houses that the owner can only keep the house if they get the rent, the correct amount of rent. If you have a low mortgage, then it's not that bad, because they even if they miss a couple of months, it's fine. You'll still be able to pay the yearly mortgage, and you'll be able to keep the property. But if you have a very high mortgage, and also if you've repossessed other properties and lied about how you can rent them out when really you can't, because you promised them to someone, or if you've it's not just my parents that are staying there. It's also Marco and the kids. They use the one bedroom as a sort of day play center, and to get away from. It's nice to have like an evening house and a day house. So the whole family is using the two flats as together. And because I guess Sophie's been going to work and stuff. Whenever she's going to work, I don't know. She's not thinking at all. She's just thinking, I think she likes the situation that I'm in, where I'm just kind of living off the rent money that's what I'm kind of doing. I'm living off the rent money of the Birmingham house. But yeah, it's not the same. Why? Because I haven't been making that much money. She's been making 3 times more than me, and obviously she's still not happy for the last few years, and the last 2-3 years. In 2000, we hardly rented out the property because it was during COVID and stuff, so we didn't get we got next to nothing that year. And also she wasn't even wanting to rent out the property. She was just, oh, I'm in Brighton, and I don't know, she's having a mental breakdown, and she didn't care that the property was just empty throughout most of the time. And I could have got tenants in there, but the couple of times we rented out the property, they ended up having a party, and I would spend 8 hours cleaning the house afterwards. So because of that, I didn't even want to rent out the property on Airbnb, and there didn't seem to be any other. We didn't know what we were doing. I was hoping that my sister would come back and live there. So for a whole year, it wasn't even being rented out. I think we did have one tenant for a month and a half, 6 weeks, and they paid quite a lot. They paid twice as much as what I would have got it anyway. But yeah, still, we didn't make that much. But yeah, over the last 2-3 years, we have made things. It's 2005 now. But yeah, if she wanted that situation where she's just living off the rent money, then she shouldn't have sold me. She shouldn't have sold me a quarter of it. But yeah, she was just wanting, I think, more, whatever more is. But anyway, I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking how easy it would be to have some sort of banking scam where you allow migrants in, and then you find migrants that and you fake a job, you fake a lifestyle. That's what Sophie kind of does. She's worked at somewhere for about 3-4 months. She's seriously thinking about quitting. And she's thinking, I need to get the mortgage now. Why? Because I've got the paychecks, and if I quit this job, then I'll no longer have the paychecks to prove that I'm in work. And that's just so bad. So you're going to lie to the banks about how you can rent out a 1-bedroom when you can't. You're going to lie to the banks about how you have a job when really you're planning on quitting, and you're going to be taking out a gigantic mortgage that you can't pay back. Under those circumstances, I'm actually going to refuse to give her any money. I'm going to refuse to sell 10% of the house. I'd be doing it to make £500 more each year. But she, if me making £500 more each year is going to help her lose a £220,000 property because she's gambled it away and made stupid decisions, then I'm not going to do that. Maybe afterwards. Maybe once I've sold them. After I hope to go to America and live in a nice big house in LA somewhere. And then spend a year recovering, and during that time I'm going to sell the Birmingham property. And I don't know what I'm going to do about this one because I don't want it. I don't like the idea of having sort of responsibilities across in a different country. You can manage a property if it's on your street very easily, but you can't manage a property if it's in a different country, and if it costs a lot to get there. And I don't like Birmingham particularly. I mean, it's okay, but I wouldn't want to come back here if I don't have to. So ideally, I would want to sell both of them. But yeah, if I did that, then Sophie would have 900 that she could buy a second house. And if she wants to do that after that, then I don't care. But yeah, right now she's. But it made me think that if the bankers wanted to literally repossess homes, they could literally find migrants who are pretending, who do a three month job to pretend, and then you get them in there and you tell them don't pay the rent, stay in there, use the law to try and justify you staying in there. They're not going to be able to pay the rent. In 2 years time they're going to fall into debt. You get a free house, and the people that fall in, you could easily do a scam like that. If the bankers wanted to get really nasty, I don't believe that they will get this nasty, but if they wanted to, and they know that this person, could only pay for the mortgage if they get a good tenant. You could deliberately be bringing lots of bad people into the country to get them to rent out these properties, to not rent out these, but pretend to rent out these properties only to just not pay. And they're going to find themselves falling into more and more debt. If they have to pay £2,000 each month to pay off this property, then each year they're going to get £12,000 broke, more and more poor. And if they've only got £100,000 investment in the property, then in 2 years time suddenly they don't have a £200,000 property investment in it. They have a £70,000 investment, and that might be enough to say, right, we need to repossess this home and sell it. And within 2 years Sophie could lose both of those properties, because she would have 100,000 investment in the 1-bedroom and 100,000 investment in the £400,000 house. in 2 years' time they could repossess both. If she can't pay the mortgage, if she gets a bad tenant and she can't pay the mortgage on the house and she can't pay the mortgage on the one bedroom because my mum's living there and she's already given her the money, but yeah, they could easily repossess the two, and she might even get lose her 3 bedroom as well. And it might say that, you know, if she's gonna quit her job and she's not even going to be able to pay that back. I think that's slightly different because she owns more than half of it. But yeah, she might keep one, but I don't know. But this whole, you know, housing market thing really is just like gambling your house away. Repossessing a home for a couple of thousand is not bad, but no, getting a mortgage for like 60,000 on your home is not that bad. But getting a £150,000 mortgage on your £200,000 home, that's basically just selling your house away to the mortgage company. That's yeah, that's just such a stupid idea. But yeah.